it's a new intro. What's that?
Ooh, cool.
Welcome to SeerNova Comics Podcast. I was like, I forgot what the show was called.
Isn't that just SeerNova podcast?
What?
Wasn't it just SeerNova podcast? Didn't we reduce that because of the?
SeerNova Podcast?
I don't remember.
Oh, wait.
You got in trouble. We got some
Yeah.
cease and desist like 4 or 5 years ago that was like, you can't use that acronym. And it's like they had nothing to do with comics. They were just being jerks. And we're like,
Yeah. It's not even in the same category.
They were just mad that we had their handle. That's all.
It was just SeerNova.com or something? Or was
it was like SeerNova. I think we called it like the SNC podcast, so like SeerNova Comic Podcast.
Now it's SN Podcast.
Now it's just SeerNova Podcast. Like there's SeerNova Comics, there's SeerNova Podcast. So like it's one of those things where like they had a podcast called SNC Podcast. It stood for something totally different. It had something to do with culture and nothing to do with comics.
Yeah, but they have nothing.
Yeah. They were in a different category too when Anchor was a thing, but now Spotify owns that. So it
was one of those things where like I just didn't want to deal with it. Like it was one of those like I don't want to have to tell them they're wrong, and I'm just like whatever. We'll just change it because I actually kind of like the idea where like if we want to make films in the future, it could be SeerNova Films. So like it just kind of worked out brand wise, anyways, especially because everybody calls us SeerNova anyways. They don't say the whole name because it's too long.
And they spell it out wrong still, like SeerNova.
Yeah,
they spaced the Seer and Nova, and I was like,
share your bank statement. Just put like social security number, address, mother's name.
But so welcome to season 3, episode 1. I like doing the seasons now because I've seen other podcasts do it, and then now we're gonna do it. Season 1 had like 100, 200 something fucking episodes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, we're gonna now break this into seasons.
Yeah, we didn't
more than one a week.
Well, no. We what it was like 3 or 4 years of just counting up, and then we were like, you know what, we should just start over at 1 every year and make it a little easier, so that way they're not like like episode 1429. It's like
so.
It's like
season 3, episode 1. We have Cristian Aluas. You're a comic artist, author, and educator. Masterpiece Art School.
And cartoonist.
Yeah. So you're everything.
Hey, real quick, only because I actually only learned this later. What is a cartoonist, for those who don't know, compared to a comic artist?
Well, that's an interesting question because I would consider. Well, I think by definition, a cartoonist is a comic book artist, but does everything.
Yeah. Basically, I learned that because there are different categories in awards, and I didn't know that. But yeah, that's like the only difference was that. Well, not only it's very difficult to do that. A cartoonist is somebody who is the inker, illustrator, colorist, and letterer. They do absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they have to write. I don't think they have to be the writer.
Yeah, no, you would do everything. Like
it is
Will
okay.
Eisner. Yeah, you would have to do everything, and that's like purists would argue that's the way to be.
That would Greg's over here like, don't judge me.
Well, I mean, like that would ideally that would be, to be considered an artist, like in that field. You're a cartoonist in the comic.
Well, it's kind of like saying like you're an artist in the field of music when like you wrote the song but have never performed it and can't sing a note or play an instrument. It's like
or you're just a singer. You're not right. You're not a. I don't know.
You're not writing anything. You're not
a musician if you're only a singer.
Correct. Yeah, you're a vocalist. Yeah. But yeah, it is funny though because like we do break it down in other industries, but it's just I feel like the comic book space is like I hadn't heard cartoonists enough because like there's very, very few cartoonists who do it all. Like it's very, very rare because you have to learn like 3 different skills. You have to learn artistry. You have to learn layouts because in order to do things like lettering and all that, like that's a whole other category of skill. And you need to know how to storytell and be able to write. So it's like those are 3 very distinct forms of artistry that you have to learn. So it's very cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I think I've done all of those with the Big Boss comic, but one of the things that I kind of admittedly fudged a bit because I wanted to do as much as I could in one program. And I think at the time, Procreate, I forget, it was like an early version, and I don't think you could add too much text, and you didn't have too much text control. So I hand lettered, and that was difficult to do it digitally, or on paper. And it was never my patient skill. Uh, and then to switch programs, because the best lettering program was usually Illustrator. So you'd have to, like when I first started doing it professionally in early 2000s, I would draw on paper, scan it, color it in Photoshop, then transfer it to Illustrator and do the lettering.
You didn't do like little dots for the halftones? Yeah.
No, that would be crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
No.
that's what a true artist would do. Torture themselves to death. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you think is like the biggest shift from like you creating from way back to now, creative wise, like when you get work, like
The biggest shift in the process of
Yeah,
doing art.
like what were you starting to do, and what are you doing now, and how like what was the change? What's the differences?
Well, almost everything is digital now. I hardly draw on paper. Actually, I never draw on paper.
You don't
I
even
mean,
like trees.
sorry.
you see a tree and you punch it.
Well, the
Big
only
blocks of
times I,
wood.
I draw on paper now is if I do studies, if I go to life drawing, or if I go to the museum and I'm copying, then I draw on sketchbooks.
Do you think that
And
helps with the when you're doing Procreate as well, like being able to draw on paper? Or do you think that like that texture? Because I've drawn on like Wacoms with like the different tipped pens versus a pencil versus the stylus. Like they feel a lot different. But yeah, what are your thoughts on
they
that?
are different. That's a great question, actually, because there is a difference. See, uh, I maybe it's generational because some people that have never drawn on paper might not even appreciate it. But there is a difference, and I think in my experience, when I tested it out, when I switched to digital, I found that the iPad Pro pencil was the best, um, and now it's like improved even more. Uh, but drawing on paper, what was I going to say? Like I think drawing on paper is like the key. But this is what I was going to say. That um, shifting what you're using, I think, is very, very important as an artist,
Like
because
continually kind of thing. So like don't stick with one for too long, or
well, I mean, you could shift back and forth, but the thing is, it's a muscle, you know, and even when I'm working in my sketchbook, like a couple of years ago, I traveled to a bunch of museums through Europe, and I saw artworks that I've been dreaming about by famous, Michelangelo and all these, and uh, and uh, and then I also went to a lot of life drawing sessions. I went. London has a large community. Paris, a different kind of community, also
what are
active.
life drawing sessions for those who don't know?
Oh, it's like you get a nude model, and everybody sits around and they draw it for you know different periods. Like five, you start out with 5 minute sketches, then 10, and then 25 minute is like the long sit.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
you make
I didn't know there was times. I knew about the models, but I didn't know that there was like time session. That's pretty cool, actually.
yeah. I prefer those because I draw so quickly, and I want to get a lot of poses rather than there's some sessions where you get a 2 hour sit, or sometimes
Yeah,
three.
just the goal is to get one really
Yeah.
good piece out. Yeah.
Usually those are closed. I remember doing one in San Diego like that, and I was like, I think it was 2 hours only, and she was clothed, and so then I bought like a cheap canvas from the dollar store. Those like ones that are like on a
Yep.
like a little
Easel, aisle.
Yeah, it wasn't even a canvas. It was just like the one on a board. It was a canvas stretched on a board, really cheap, you know. So I brought oil paints, and I just did an oil painting of just the head, you know. And it, you know, I knew I had a timeline, so 2 hours, and it looked as finished as it could look. Really, like it looked great, you know. So you got those time limits. But the point is that in my sketchbook, what I do, and not a lot of artists do this, is I'll switch the medium, because like when I get too comfortable, I suspect that I lose like the objectivity. You know, I'm not looking at the object anymore. I'm not studying the object uh, as much, and I feel like using a different tool makes you kind of disregard the tool.
Yeah,
and it's all about the subject.
it's kind of like I've heard about literally brushing your teeth with your left hand to literally like remind yourself, oh yeah, take care of every tooth, you know, because your brain is so used to doing it, it's autopilot. So yeah, that's interesting.
That is exactly the reason. Yeah.
Yeah, so I imagine switching even like whether it's pens, pencils, inks, colors, you know, water, paint, oil, acrylic, and then also the physical thing you're painting on, whether it's paper or canvas or whatever, and then all the way up to the digital and the different various pens for that and surfaces for that. Like even the Wacom where it doesn't have the glass screen, it's the surface material, and then they have the one with the glass screen on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I did that, and I did like, I mean, I copied a lot of works on the iPad Pro 2, and I kind of adjusted one of the pens to create kind of this charcoal brush that I liked, and I used that a lot. And then I would choose different brushes if I wanted like an oil paint technique. But those are fun. Yeah. What was like? What was the start of that?
The main question was just, do you think that switching between digital and paper causes any problems, or is it beneficial? So it kind of sounds like the beneficial is what it is.
Well, yeah, the final artwork looks different. That's the key. It never, you know, everything's, you could tell.
Yeah, most people. The other thing I was going to ask too is, especially with the world of AI art, one of the things I thought about the other day was, so people, there's people that absolutely hate AI art, people that love it, and then my thought is, what's the difference between Photoshop and a pencil, right? It's relatively the same a little bit, but then when you get to something like Procreate, where you go like this, and then it makes a perfect arch. What are your thoughts on stuff like that? Do you, first off, I know you can turn this stuff on and off. I know that, you know, there's different ways to use it that are a little more creative than just, you know, making a perfect circle real quick. What are your thoughts on the usage of stuff like that in Procreate versus just straight, you know, Wacom pad tracing whatever you're drawing?
It is funny because sometimes I'm drawing with a pencil on the paper, and I like tap the pencil to try to undo. I'm like, oh shit! I have to like erase it. The difference you asked?
I was saying, what are your thoughts on the fact that like Procreate's getting closer and closer to basically digitally altering what you're doing?
Well,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So the answer to that is like we're just, in my opinion, we're just adapting, and it's interesting. And I certainly hope in colleges they're still teaching the traditional way that, like, you know, I feel like everybody has to learn all the rules before you break them, but then you're just caught up to everything real quick, you know, because there's so many advances.
Yeah, that you don't really know the rules.
Fascinating to learn those. Yeah. But, you know, I think it's happened in web design. You see it a lot because I used to do some web design early on, and you couldn't design a website without knowing some coding. You know, there was like Dreamweaver when I started, and then I would use design mode. But now, I mean, it's way even beyond that. Everything's drag and drop.
Yeah, it's drag and drop, and now they even have type it out and it'll make it for you.
Well, yeah. So there's like the people that can only type
Oh no, I meant like you could say make a box with a block
yeah.
shadow and or a box shadow and it'll do it. Like it's gotten to the point where you had to drag and drop and it still be creative, almost like a what's it called when you put pieces of paper on something?
Collage.
Collage, yeah. It's almost like you got to be a collage artist to make them with the Dreamweaver. And now it's like you can be like, make me a site that looks like this, and it's like done.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean because I've seen some of those sites. So in some ways, designers are handicapped if they're not taught everything in school. And I think, great artists and designers are made before they even arrive in school.
Yeah, it's like that criteria of like you need to be somebody who wants to learn the form of the art, and like even comics, like people are jumping right ahead and being like, oh, I'll use these templates and then I'll use AI and just throw this stuff in there. It's like even if the artwork was fantastic, you're still not going to be good at it because you don't understand it. Like you have to understand how does one panel move to the next? What can you show in a panel that will portray what you want to portray so that I don't even need words to follow the story? Then how can you make sure that the words fit into the story so it enhances the story and doesn't cover the art? Like there's so many rules that even if AI could do it, you can't just jump that far ahead. And I think that when it comes to like being able to draw with Procreate and how, like I said, it'll make a perfect circle for you, so you don't have to draw perfect. You still need to be able to draw the rest of it. So it's an interesting, you still need to know how it should look before you can leap that far ahead.
But that's the thing too, because Procreate, I mean, unless it's one of the brushes where it has shapes.
Yeah.
But if you hold the circle, it might not be perfectly circular. It might be a little, even slightly oval when you lock it in.
And sometimes you want that, and sometimes you don't. And like again, it's knowing the rules. Like so that's why that's like a big deal.
But you have to also know it as an artist that it's not perfect. And what I'll do is because I'll do that, but what I'll do is then I'll select the
Transform.
the transform and I could see the square, I could see like where it's missing and I could adjust it that way. But I mean that's the big handicap of the novice artists is that they don't pay attention to those details. And what I was saying earlier is like guys before college are almost fully formed at like 19, because I remember being in college and I went to animation and there were guys that were 18, that were just like prodigies, like they would get hired, a year in, somebody would recruit them, because they're just that good. And then they were learning in a studio. So I think most artists and even writers are fully formed at a much earlier age. I mean, you're still going to learn things, and I'm actually been ruminating on this very subject for a while because when I was touring and doing all these drawings, I was like asking myself, like, have I actually improved? Because I can look at my anatomy drawings from 18 before college, and what I really gained is, well, I did gain more knowledge, but I mean, I knew exactly the shape of everything, mostly at 18, 19.
Was it like speed? Is that like the main thing you got from it, or was it?
I got technique and speed, yeah, but I was always pretty fast because I was impatient. I always looked at it like this, like, I always try to hurry up to the same height of, like, let's say I'm climbing a hill, I'll rush up to that same peak, the same summit, so I could, okay, then it's like the point where I'm like learning. This is uncharted. Then I'm careful. Then I'm slower than usual because it's uncharted, it's unknown. I'm doing something new. I'm using a new tool or something, you know?
That's like a flow state. It's that idea of it's like it's better than you've ever done, but it's just below what you can't do, and you kind of just float like this in there.
Yeah. So so I'm always rushing to where I've been before, so then I could slow down the process again and learn, uh, and force myself to learn.
So question on that then too. We were talking about everything from paper to digital. If, somebody's, I don't know, 10, 12, 15, they're trying to get into becoming an artist. Do you recommend starting with digital and or paper? Like, is there one that you recommend doing first? And the reason why I ask it like this is, for me, I got decent at Photoshop, but I didn't like learn how Photoshop works and then make something. I jumped right ahead for like a really hard tutorial, and I went all the way through and made this really cool thing. And then I did that a couple of times, and then I jumped back, learned how Photoshop works, and now I can make whatever I want in there. So for me, it was like I had to go real specific at learning something difficult all the way to the end, so that I'm like, oh, that's what I can make, and then jump back. Where if I had to do that with pen and pencil, right, I got better at drawing after that than I did doing that first, because I could see a final outcome. But what are your thoughts on like the average artist, or the average person trying to become an artist? Do you think that it's better to start in the digital medium because you have more tools and et cetera, or start in the physical medium because you get that sensation of what it's like to physically create the art?
Well, I think it's great the way you approached it, because that's you kind of needed to prove to yourself that this was even a useful tool, right?
Yeah.
You're kind of like, okay, let me see if like I'm gonna try like the hardest thing, and then like let's see if it's legit, And then it's like, okay, yeah, this is I can make some cool stuff. Now let's really back up and learn the tools as if I have to teach them,
Yeah,
but
that's
in terms of
keep going.
yeah, but in terms of like what medium to choose, I don't want to sound old, but I don't really believe it, to say that like, oh, you gotta do it like I did, because I think some people would be like, oh, they're so nostalgic about, certainly like a generation like mine that has seen, so many changes, so like, I'm not stuck on that. I feel like a young person, if they have the interest, they can choose whatever medium. And in fact, the tablet is, I mean, endless, like you could do so much. You could experiment with all these mediums.
Yeah.
And you could stay within this, and then, maybe go into game design and other fields because you're limited to this. But I was always an artist that, I mean, I've written a novel, I've written other nonfiction. I've had large scale oil paintings on exhibit. I actually am starting to paint again, developing a new oil painting series, and so you know, I I I like the tactile nature of art as well, because well, it's different avenues, it's different patrons,
Do you think that like the idea of doing so I also took like a illustration like pencil course 3 years ago maybe, and in there they started with like a very specific drawing that you followed everything he said for like I don't know, like a 30-minute video, and it was just drawing an eyeball. And when you're done, like it looks really good. Even the people that have never drawn before, like you can tell they've never drawn before, but it's still like that's way better than the average person can draw, right? Yeah. So to me, that was similar to what I did with Photoshop, of like finding a really hard tutorial, doing it first, and like seeing what I could make, and then going back and trying to make stuff from scratch and trying to learn like, oh, like what about these types of techniques or these types of tools? What about that style, regardless of medium, of kind of doing some really hard project first and then going back? Because I've seen that in what's it called, like dyslexic dyslexia, ADHD people, it seems like they work really good from specific and then broaden to learn all the rules than they do like if you're in school and you're like, hey, here's math, and they're like, what am I going to use this for, right? And but like once it gets narrower, it becomes more obvious what it's used for, right? So like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, or do you still think that like maybe it's good to go, hey, this is how you draw a really good line, and this is how you do shading, and this is how you draw shapes, and then draw something cool, or draw something cool, then learn how you could do that from those components?
Well, yeah, different age groups can get impatient if you're taking them step by step. I prefer um, the slower method because the way I like to teach and my method is more philosophical. Like it's half philosophical and theoretical, and then it's like technique, and there's kind of like some almost magic involved, because there's like fun little tricks, So I'll get excited, like if I'm covering anatomy with somebody, or even like I usually would start in cartooning with heads and then bodies and then so forth. But if let's say if I get into anatomy, and I do have a very good anatomy, a quick little like anatomy course online, and then I teach like the underneath foundations, and I talk about muscles, and I share stories about when I learned how to draw muscles from muscle magazines, and when I first learned how to draw a hand, uh, I was like, because I realized my hands were not good. I was like, gosh, I must have been like 10 or 11, and I remember the summer very well because I was like, okay, let me try to figure this out. So then what I did was like I traced my hand, and then I pinpointed like the distance between the knuckles. So there was one realistic version that I did, and then I broke it down, and I tried to draw it with like little lines and not the bones, but just kind of like joints. I
Yeah.
broke down all the joints, and then I tried different positions for it and different angles, and then eventually I was able to draw like one hand really well, and then I drew the shit out of that.
I had a roommate in college who he had like a picture above his bed that was like a hand with a phone in front of it, that where the phone was showing it was robotics. But I think he actually got a scholarship to like a STEM school, ironically, for the quality of the drawings of hands, because it's like the single hardest thing to draw on a human is a hand. And it's part of why Disney did the four fingers, because it's so hard to keep drawing that 5 fingers for that structure. It's a very odd structure to replicate over and over again. And if you're bringing on artists who aren't the core team, and you need them to replicate what everyone else is doing, having them draw something that's already really hard to draw and make it look the same on all of the stuff, I can't even imagine how difficult that might be.
I also definitely preach to always get good at drawing the things that everybody else likes the least, the difficult things, like I mean, even in college there was guys that like would draw their character and their hands would be like behind their butt, like, or in their pockets.
So
They would
it's
just
like
be like hiding
like this, like, what's up?
yeah, they were just like hiding hands. It's like,
That's
what's going on?
hilarious.
Why are your characters so shy?
I'm not gonna lie. If there was a comic called Shy Guy, and all it had to do is like his hands are always like this,
Yeah.
or like this, or like just like tucking them in his cut. Yeah, that'd be hilarious.
There might be, actually. I don't know, but yeah. So it's like I always revere artists that do the hard stuff. And actually, in the cartooning book, I have a section of about 3 pages. I think it's just called "Hard Stuff Made Easy," and it's just like 1 page just on hands, 1 page on feet, which nobody hardly ever draws. Just breaks it down in different ways, and it's actually and I don't believe in just one method. That's why, like, you tell me like you want to go in deep and do something details and then learn after. That's cool, like that's how you work, so even for techniques like for the hands, yeah, I had the ones where like I had just lines and dots and joints, but then I also then did one with cylinders, so I could understand the volume. So it's like, and then there's like the mitt, where it's like I look at it as like like a winter mitt, and it's only in 3 parts, thumbs, palm, and fingers. And then when you spread it, you just spread the mitt, So so you just fan it out, and then you just separate the fingers. So it's like but I get really passionate about that stuff when I'm teaching. So I I take them through the process. So I like that foundation. I like telling stories because I feel like people remember things better. When there's a story associated with it.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So before we head off, you obviously briefly mentioned earlier you've got classes on what you teach. What's some of the stuff you want to shout out if people want to learn more about you, check you out, and enter your little world?
Well, I sent some attachments. Did you?
I didn't add any of them in there.
I wanted to share some.
But you'll be probably back on again this year. So yeah.
It was fun when I did that tutorial with the caricature or whatever it was. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I still have that.
Still have yours?
I have that somewhere.
What am I plugging? Oh, the big news is I'll be at C2E2. I got into that.
Very cool.
That'll be in late March. There he is. That's a classic. So that'll be late March. I'll be in the writer's block.
Cool.
I was there last year too. So I'm excited about that. I just ordered inventory for that. And I am working on another book that I might have ready for there. It's actually a collection of life drawing, which I thought would be kind of a fun thing to do, kind of in a sketchbook form, just to have some extra product, that could be fun and see what people think of it. But besides that, masterpieceartschool.com. I have that anatomy course that I mentioned, and a freelancing course that's based on my my book, It's a Living Surviving as a Freelancer in the 21st Century. And that's it. I still do commissions as a freelancer, and I do originals. And I'm just.
Where's the best place for people to reach out to you if they want to chat with you?
Masterpiece Art School. Instagram, Masterpiece Art School.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
and I still have at Big Boss Comic. It's still up there. It's like unaltered, but it's my sequential comic that I did all on Instagram, which I still believe is still the only ongoing comic that was done on Instagram. Like it was like one panel each day, 5 days a week for 13 months.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah. It's one regimented way to accomplish something.
It certainly is, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on and being the first guest of this season.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I appreciate being the first guest too.
Yeah.
I think people will click on it. It's like the first episode.
Yeah.
Who is this enigmatic figure here?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.